What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel for another episode in the Ask Me Anything series. We're just about 4 weeks into the NHL season. Every team has played at least 11 games, so there is no shortage of things to talk about right now. And as always, you guys absolutely killed it with the questions, so huge shout out to everyone who sent one in. Even if your question isn't featured in this week's episode, just know I read them all and I appreciate all of you guys. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and start off this episode with the first question from RJ, who says, is Jakob Dobeš the real deal in Montreal, or is it still Sam Montembeault's net to lose? I mean, it's definitely starting to look like Dobeš is the real deal, but I will say I still think it's Sam Montembeault's net to lose. This is a guy who started 60 games for the Canadiens last season, was obviously a huge reason why they made the playoffs, so I think he's somebody who's earned the right to have a long leash and to be able to go through a bit of a cold stretch and still get consistent starts. And that's what we're seeing right now, is despite the drastic difference in Dobeš and Montembeault's numbers early on this season, as of now they've still each started the same amount of games, 6 apiece, although more recently Montreal has started to lean on Dobeš a little bit more as he started 4 to their last 6 games, which makes sense. When it comes to goaltenders, you gotta ride the hot hand. It's not like Dobeš has just been slightly outplaying Montembeault. It hasn't even really been close. Montembeault has been bad and Dobeš has been one of the best goaltenders in the entire NHL. He's yet to lose a game, a perfect 6-0 record, a .930 save percentage, a sub 2 goals against average, as well as being top 5 in the NHL in goals saved above expected. You have to think at some point soon things are going to regress to the mean when it comes to Montreal's goaltending, in the sense that Dobeš is probably not going to be able to sustain this level of elite play, and Montembeault is probably not going to be this bad all season. There's no doubt about it though, early on this season, Dobeš's play has blown Montembeault's out of the water, and what a luxury it is to have for a team like Montreal where your starter is struggling to this extent to start the season, and yet it really hasn't mattered. Montreal still finds themselves first place in the Atlantic Division because their rookie backup has been so damn good. If Montembeault is able to bounce back from this poor start, and like I said, I think he's going to, there's just no way he's going to be this bad all season long, Montreal very well could have one of the best goaltending tandems in the entire league on their hands. Moving on now to the next question. This one comes from Mr. Kanji Chris, who says, where would you put your money if you had to? 1. Dorofeyev scoring 50 goals, 2. Pittsburgh winning the Metro, or 3. Buffalo are all-in buyers at the deadline. This one's easy for me. I'm definitely going with Dorofeyev scoring 50 goals. Over the last calendar year, he has really emerged as one of the best pure snipers in the entire NHL. He's off to a red-hot start this season with 9 goals through his first 11 games. Now, he does currently own a shooting percentage of over 27% on the season, which is obviously unsustainable, but this is a guy who scored 35 goals last season on a 13.8 shooting percentage, which is not an unsustainable number for a guy like Dorofeyev whatsoever. So even when Dorofeyev's shooting percentage on the season inevitably regresses back down to that 13 to 15% range, I still think a 50-goal season for him is achievable, considering the fact that his ice time is up almost a full minute this season compared to last season, and for the majority of those minutes he's on the ice at the same time as Mitch Marner, who is one of the best setup guys in the entire league. This next question comes from Derek, who says, name one team from each conference that's currently in a playoff spot but you think will miss, and one team from each conference that's currently out but you think will make it. Starting off in the Western Conference, the one team that's in a playoff spot that I don't think will end up making it is Seattle. They've had a pretty solid start to the season defensively, and even if they're able to sustain that and they remain a well above average defensive team all season long, I just don't think they're going to be able to score enough goals to make the playoffs this season. And for the Western Conference team that's currently not in a playoff spot that I think will end up making it, I guess I'll go with LA. Even though the concerns that most of us had about the Kings' blue line heading into the season have already been proven to be pretty valid concerns, I still think they find a way to make the playoffs this season in what is a relatively weak Pacific Division. And when it comes to the Eastern Conference, the team that's currently in a playoff spot that I don't think is going to end up making it, even though they currently sit 3rd in the entire conference, I'm going to say the Pittsburgh Penguins. I really just don't think what they're doing right now is sustainable. They rank 3rd in the entire NHL in terms of team shooting percentage, which has led to some guys having some pretty surprising totals to start the season. Justin Brazeau is a point per game for them. Anthony Mantha has 11 points in 13 games. Crosby and Malkin have obviously been otherworldly to start the season, and I don't want to sit here and say what they are doing is unsustainable, because I think betting against Crosby and Malkin is never a good idea, but I definitely think eventually a lot of the other guys on the roster who have gotten off to uncharacteristically hot starts are going to fizzle out, especially when it comes to their goaltending. Both Shilovs and Jari have been phenomenal to start the season, and even even though goaltending is often very hit or miss and difficult to predict and guys can come out of nowhere and just have incredible seasons, I'd be lying if I said I expect Shelov's and Jari to remain one of the best tandems in the league all season long. And lastly, one Eastern Conference team that's not currently in a playoff spot that I think ends up making it. There's honestly quite a few, but if I had to pick one, I'll go with the Florida Panthers. Despite the fact that they are without Tkachuk and Barkov, the goaltending hasn't been good, and guys like Bennett and Verhaeghe have gotten off to really slow starts, they still find themselves over 500. There's quite a few guys on that roster right now that I think are due for some positive regression. Even with the injuries to key players like Barkov and Tkachuk, I would be genuinely shocked if the Panthers miss the playoffs this season. Moving on now to the next question. This one comes from Dalton Baxter, who says, with their hot start, could the Penguins actually be buyers this season? I'm going to say no. I just gave you all the reasons why I think Pittsburgh is eventually going to fizzle out when answering the last question, but even if they somehow don't and they are still in a playoff spot leading up to the trade deadline, I just can't see Kyle Dubas being really aggressive and looking to bolster the lineup in hopes of making a playoff push. Since taking over as Penguins GM, Dubas has done a lot of work to rebuild the prospect pool, stockpile draft picks, and gain cap flexibility. I mean, maybe we could see him go out and make some smaller moves to try and improve the roster, or go out and target younger players with term who can come in right away and help the Penguins win, but also be a key part of the future. But no matter where the Penguins are in the standings leading up to the deadline, I can guarantee we're not going to see them go out and trade first-round draft picks or top prospects for rentals. This next question comes from Jack Highland, who says, what is your thoughts on the World Series? I know this is an NHL channel, but I got a lot of questions asking me my thoughts on this, so I figured I'd answer it quickly. As a Jays fan, obviously devastated about the ending, but just as a baseball fan, from a pure entertainment standpoint, that was probably the most entertaining World Series that I've ever seen. It really did have a little bit of everything, especially in Game 7, the benches clearing, unreal defensive plays, clutch home runs, fantastic pitching performances. Really, the Jays' entire playoff run throughout the month of October was some of the most fun I've had watching sports in a very long time. I just wish it had a bit of a happier ending. This next question comes from Rockstar Girl, who says, do you think the Ducks have a chance to finally get out of the basement this year? Their young talent has been unreal. Beckett Seneca has been amazing so far. I would definitely say the Ducks have a very good chance of pulling themselves out of the basement of the NHL this season, and those are kind of the expectations that I had for them coming into the season. When I made a video ranking every team on a tier list based off the expectations that I had for them, I didn't have the Ducks down in the Gavin McKenna tier or even the no playoffs tier. I had them in the wildcard hunt tier, but it's looking like that may have been selling them short, as the Ducks currently find themselves 7-3-1. They look like a completely different team from the last few seasons where offense was so hard to come by. Oftentimes Ducks games were a chore to sit through. This season that has not been the case whatsoever. They've been one of the best offensive teams in the league, which I imagine has to be a breath of fresh air for Ducks fans. It's looking like they definitely made a great decision moving on from Greg Cronin and bringing in Joel Quenneville. The team defense is definitely still a work in progress. There's only 4 teams in the NHL with a higher expected goals against than the Ducks so far this season. Thankfully though, Lucas Dostal has been unbelievable so far this season, so he's really helped them out in that department. Moving on now to the next question. This one comes from Amanzi97, who says, is Schaefer already a top 15 D-man in the league? I'm going to say he absolutely is, which is pretty insane considering we didn't even really know if Schaefer was going to be playing in the NHL full-time this season. There was talk about him potentially going back and playing another season in the OHL with Erie because he only played 17 games all of last season. But after just 12 games in the NHL so far, which isn't a huge sample size, I think it's safe to say Matthew Schaefer is here to stay. And so far this season, there have absolutely not been 15 defensemen better than Matthew Schaefer. His 5 goals leads all NHL defensemen in that category. He's got 10 total points through 12 games. And it's not like he's just putting up solid offensive numbers while playing sheltered minutes at 5-on-5, but getting the opportunity to play in the power play. From his very first game, he was thrown right into the fire. He leads all New York Islanders skaters in ice time per game this season by a pretty wide margin. He's playing in all situations, and basically every aspect of his game so far has been exceptional. I mean, I think we all had a pretty good idea that at some point Matthew Schaefer would be a phenomenal defenseman for the New York Islanders. I mean, he was the first overall draft pick for a reason, but I think if anyone tells you they knew he would be this good, this fast, they're lying. What he's done for the Islanders so far through 12 games has been really cool to see, and if he keeps this up up for the entire season, he is going to run away with the Calder Trophy race, and he may even get some Norris Trophy votes. And now finally, finishing up this episode of the Ask Me Anything series with the last question from N3 Cryptic, who says, thoughts on some recent extensions: Natchez 8 years 11.5 mil per, Markstrom 2 years 6 million per, Cooley 8 years 10 million per, and Thomas Harley 8 years 10.587 million per. We'll start off with the smallest one here, and that is Markstrom signing a 2-year extension with the Devils for a cap of 6 million per season. That's going to kick in next season, of course. And I think this is the perfect kind of extension for a guy like Markstrom. He's 35 years old, so obviously you don't want to give him a 3, 4, or 5-year deal. So I think 2 years is the sweet spot here. Obviously, he's gotten off to a pretty slow start this season, but if he can bounce back and find his form from last season and maintain that level of play throughout this contract extension, then I think this deal is going to be just fine. Next up, we'll talk about the Cooley extension. I absolutely love this move by Utah. Logan Cooley looks like the real deal. He's not the kind of player you want to mess around with and sign him to a couple of bridge deals. He's the kind of player you want to lock up long term. He is going to be one of the cornerstones for this Utah Mammoth franchise for a very long time. He's obviously gotten off to a fantastic start this season with 8 goals and 12 points in 12 games. I think he has the potential to be a perennial point per game player for Utah for a very long time. I wouldn't be surprised if he has 1 or 2 100+ point seasons in his career, and before long, 10 million a season for that kind of player is going to be looked at as an absolute bargain. And I feel pretty much the same way about the Harley extension. He's a can't miss talent, the kind of guy you want to get locked up long term, and Dallas finally has done that. He's a legit #1 defenseman, one of the better all-around defenders in the league. It's obviously still going to take a bit more getting used to seeing all of these guys sign for 10+ million per season, but that's the new normal. That's the reality of the world we live in now with the cap on the rise. And lastly, we have the Natchez extension, 8 years, 11.5 million per. It is kind of crazy to see Martin Natchez sign an extension for just 500,000 less per season than what Mikko Rantanen got on his extension with Dallas. Hindsight is 2020, but looking back on it now, you have to wonder if Colorado would have handled that Mikko Rantanen situation a little bit differently if they knew that they were just going to have to end up paying a guy like Natchez this much. At the end of the day, though, the Avalanche really didn't have a whole lot of leverage in this situation. They could not risk having the same thing happen with Natchez that they just went through last season with Mikko Rantanen. They had to get this guy locked up long term, and even though this may be a slight overpay, let's be real, Martin Natchez has been a fantastic fit in Colorado. Him and Nathan MacKinnon are one of the most dynamic duos in the entire league. He's on pace to score well over 100 points this season, and Colorado also did get Jack Drury as part of that trade, who's been a solid depth piece for them. So in the end, I honestly think every team ended up doing pretty well for themselves in that whole Mikko Rantanen saga: Dallas, Colorado, and Carolina. So that is going to wrap up this episode of the Ask Me Anything series. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, huge shout out to everyone who sent in a question. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to see another one next week, then be sure to leave this video a like. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all season long, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.